Hey, what's up? My name is Jose Duncan Jr., and I would like to welcome you to the Unnatural Born Leader podcast. Hey, what's up? Welcome to the Unnatural Born Leader podcast, episode 25. Thank you for being here, and thank you for being a continued supporter of the podcast. And I thank you guys for tuning in each week, and I hope I'm able to produce value for you, your family, someone you know, someone you think can really benefit from listening to the podcast. And I hope that we can continue to grow and to elevate and to expand our knowledge and our capacity for leadership together. So many of you don't know that I'm currently writing a novel. I'm an aspiring author who is working on his first ever book. It's a self-help memoir, and it's a story about my development through the years of being an athlete, being a young kid, being in college, and the transitions that I made and the lessons I learned from important mentors and leaders and coaches along the way. And I compacted it into a story and transitioning in and out of stories and lessons that I hope that produces some value and could be a great read, and that will be coming out later this year. But in that writing process, I'm starting to realize similar patterns. And a big pattern that I'm really focusing on now is this pattern of you versus you. In a lot of the chapters, I'm speaking about some of these similar contexts that you do here in this podcast. But these next few weeks, I want to really dive into you versus you and produce a certain amount of parts to this concept that's really important. And I want to be really current and up to date with what I'm feeling, what am I experiencing, what I'm observing as a high level observer and a high level thinker, right? So, yes, you versus you this week. And the first thing I want to talk about is this idea of disconnecting to connect, right? Disconnecting to connect. We live in an age of information overload. It's no secret. We have numerous social media platforms. We have numerous websites. We have YouTube. We have all types of media outlets, all types of news, all types of books, everything. Everything we have is information, and how we use it and how we apply it to our lives, then it becomes knowledge. So this information overload is somewhat very useful if we're able to be intentional about what we're consuming. And if you pay attention to the whole Facebook ads and the ad service and the SEO and the management of what we're seeing, a lot of the new advertising and marketing is surrounded by being very intentional based on the habits of the individual, right? So when we hear about the phone listening to us, or we may say something on our phones, and then we see an ad on our social media platforms about the exact thing we're talking about, a huge part of that is patterns, where these algorithms, are seeing patterns of behavior from us, and then is therefore given intentional responses in marketing and advertising that may or may not appeal to us, and a lot of times it does. A lot of this information is valuable. It's educational. It's inspiring some people. And for a lot of us, it's honestly just entertaining. And that's a huge emphasis on going on social media, going on these social platforms, is to be educated, entertained, or inspired in some facet, right? So I've been noticing how well connected I was to social media and to all of this information, and how slowly being so connected to all of these things started to interrupt and distract me from some of the things that help me stay connected to myself. I noticed that I stopped meditating as much. I no longer journaled as much. I was continuing to exercise as that is a huge priority in my life, but other areas of managing what I'm doing day to day started to take a toll. Doing projects, my creative work, all that stuff, I started to procrastinate more and more about as I went along. And in replace of doing those things, I was on Instagram, on Facebook, or on all these platforms, reading this, listening to this, on Netflix, whatever, just connected to other platforms, other services, other resources. And I stopped connecting with me. And once that starts happening, something triggers in my mind that something is wrong. As these behaviors start to impact my health, right? First of all, that's the first thing I pay attention to if I see major changes and major step back is my health. If my health starts to be impacted by these things, I usually get right on track immediately. So my health started to be impacted. I started to get more headaches. I started to be more anxious a lot of the time. And speaking with my girlfriend, she was experiencing a lot of these same things, just being so connected all day, and what that did to her concentration and how well she managed her creative activities and things like that. So I believe as individuals who are personally developing, who's placing emphasis on their health and their wellness, as leaders, as people who are taking deliberate steps to elevating, it's important that we become critical observers of our actions, of our behaviors. And when we are connected so much, we have to take steps back to regulate what's happening in that connection. And I've been preaching about it for a long time, that being connected and how we're so connected now has a lot of great benefits, as it opens up new opportunities for us to connect, grow socially, financially together, spiritually, whatever you're into, right? And on the other side of that coin is this overwhelming need to be connected and not be serving ourselves at the same time. So as leaders, it's our job to ask those difficult questions. Asking, why am I so connected? What am I doing with this connection? How are my behaviors being impacted by this connection? What's changed since I've been connecting more? What's different since I stopped connecting with myself? As leaders, these are difficult questions to ask yourself, because you know there are difficult answers along the way. And with those answers, it's an understanding that has to be action taken to find solutions. And having that solution-based mindset as a leader is important when we're trying to disconnect so that we can connect. So some major things I was noticing when I was too connected was I stopped listening to my intuition. I stopped trusting the things I knew. I stopped having creative ideas, creative moments, creative sparks. My procrastination became really, really, really bad. And I started to neglect major priorities that I set for myself, and even going against things that I actually schedule for myself on the day to day. And when this started to become a pattern, I started to take notice and think more critically about what I was doing. So last week, I got the chance to fly out to California to visit my dad, and I felt that this would be a great time to disconnect, being that California is 3 hours behind of New York. I felt like I would be disconnected either way, being that I wasn't as up to date. So I took this moment to disconnect and find some balance and learn how to connect with the person that is most important, me, right? So I did that last week, and I was working out more. I decided to cook a lot more. I decided to research, pay attention to my health, learn new things about my health, my wellness, educate myself more, and just become a diehard researcher about growth, about personal development as that something I'm passionate about. So in that chance to disconnect, I found that I was more happy. I was more in tune with what was going on. And not only that, I was observing my surroundings and connecting with others at a higher level. And when I'm in conversation, when I'm around, when I'm out and about, I'm fully present in the moment, and I'm not thinking about connecting again. I don't have an urge to connect again. And I did this by just deleting everything that created a connection. And I think that's important sometimes, that we find a balance. And if we're struggling with that balance, that we completely remove something to create a withdrawal in a way, to see if we need it. And when we are able to understand that we may not need it or need it for particular reasons, then we can get back into it. And with that new information we gained about ourselves, we can be more intentional and pay attention to the prioritization of our time. I was speaking with a friend the other day on the phone, and we were talking about procrastination and distraction. Actually, it was one of my clients that I train currently virtually. We were talking about distractions and what's going on and how to manage distractions. And I told her that if I wasn't so distracted, the book that I'm writing right now, I would have done 6 weeks ahead before. I would have had the book done within a matter of 12 weeks rather than having it being extended out to such a long period of time. And writing this book has been one of the most difficult things I've ever had to do, because it's mentally challenging, and it's pushing me out of my comfort zone. And what I'm finding is that I have to be deliberate and intentional as to how I get myself in creative mind spaces, how I sit down and be creative and go and tap into all of my creative sides. And it's hard to find that balance and tweak it so that I'm prepared. So I never felt prepared enough to sit down and write. But when I finally got the chance to do so and disconnect, turn off my phone, put my phone in the next room, and I began writing, I was able to just flow. The writing flew. I didn't really think about it too much. It was just a very natural cause. So I think that in that process of writing, I'm learning more and more about disconnecting and connecting, and putting things on paper, writing things down, typing things, saving things in your phone, and having those creative juices flowing is important. Because once we are connected to everything else, a lot of those things will stop, because we're starting to consume other people's creative content. We're starting to consume other people's ideas, opinions, and thoughts and processes. It's just too much, right? So a lot of you know that I'm an active reader. I read a lot, and I've been reading a lot of new books, between memoirs, self-help, fictional stories, and things like that. And I like to do my research. I like to read. I like to learn. I'm a personal development junkie. I love having overwhelming consumption of this personal development. And right now, I'm reading a book by Jim Quick. He is a world-renowned brain scientist who studies how the brain works and how we can make it extraordinary, how we can be limitless is his focus. And he wrote a book called Limitless: Upgrade Your Brain, Learn Anything Faster, and Unlock Your Exceptional Life. So I just started reading this book, and a lot of things are sticking out to me right away. It's so culturally relevant at this time, and it's so relevant to this episode that I want to share some of the things he mentioned in the book. So Jim Quick talked about the brain's ability to concentrate between 10 to 40 minutes at a time. And that normally after that period of time, our minds tend to wander. And to combat that, he spoke about this technique called the Pomodoro technique. It's a technique where we concentrate in 25-minute increments. We are consuming either reading, books, content, media, podcasts, whatever, we consume it in 25-minute increments, especially if it's something that's educational. And his reasoning for that was to increase retention. That we as a millennials and people who are in this consumption world, in the world of information, have trouble with retention. Although we consume all this information, we read all this information, we may not retain it or can recall it to others in detail. So this Pomodoro technique is meant to get a chunk of information consumed and completely remove yourself so that you can retain that information. And obviously, he suggests things like writing down what you just learned, or reflecting on what you just learned, or just giving some time to reflect on what you just consumed. So that technique I've been trying with other areas of my life. I've been, constantly reading 20 minutes at a time, 15 minutes at a time, not reading too much in one sitting. But I'm trying this technique in how much I consume social media or how much I consume anything. I'm struggling with it on Netflix, but obviously in other areas, I'm really trying to use this technique when I'm trying to retain information and really be mindful of my consumption. So I urge you to practice this Pomodoro technique, research it, look it up, learn what it's about, learn what areas of your life you can probably implement this practice and see what it does for you. As some people may not have an issue with consumption, or you may really, really like reading where you can read for hours at a time, or you like watching videos and things like that. You can consume it hours at a time. If your purpose is not to retain the information and not to remember, then, clearly that technique may not be the best technique for you. But if you are consuming things for the sake of understanding what you're consuming and really retaining it and being able to recall it, try this technique out. Try it out with reading. Try it out with consumption. Try it out with creative projects. Tweak it, and don't feel bad if you're not getting it at the first. Don't feel bad if you're not doing it the right way or you're struggling with it. Because honestly, I use this technique to get me going. I use this technique to spark something, to get me focusing on small increments of production. I know that going into a new project, if I can concentrate for 25 minutes, I can handle that. That's manageable, right? So I go into a creative project or writing a book where I'm saying I'm going to write for 25 minutes and I'm going to stop. But once I start writing, now I'm in the flow of things. And even though this technique is not meant for things like being in the flow for long periods of time, but it gets me in the flow because in my mind, I'm telling myself 25 minutes of writing and break. And it's powerful what you can actually get done in 25 minutes of production. And I never thought it could be true, but if you take a intentional look at what you're doing and remove the distractions around you, that 25 minutes can be a powerful chunk of time that you can get a lot done in. Disconnecting and connecting with ourselves means that we are becoming more aware of the distractions around us. And we may not be able to remove those distractions right away, but we're now aware of it. We accept it. We're okay with those things being present. And now we can navigate around those things or take steps to eliminate, to reduce distractions and things like that. The whole purpose of disconnecting so that we can connect with ourselves is that we make decisions based on what we want. And what I find is that when we are seeing other people make decisions, we are consuming the decisions of others, we are consuming the actions and the lifestyles of others, we don't necessarily make the decisions that we want to make. We make the decisions that we feel like are relevant, and that's going to get us some type of approval or acceptance because that person that we're watching is doing that. And we know that deep down that's not us, but we feel like that's what people are connecting with. Or in your case, that's what you're connecting with. So you feel like that way is the way it's supposed to be done. disconnect. Disconnect. And in that disconnection, you realize that you are a unique human being. You have creative ideas. Your thinking process is unique. And the entire big picture may be the same as someone else, but the way you go about it and the creative ways you handle it is completely yours. Although a person's doing something in a particular way, you have the ability and the talent and the skill set to do it in a completely different way. And if not in a completely different way, your personality and your aura and what you bring to that table is completely different than anyone else, right? There's millions of lawyers in the world. Doesn't mean we still don't need lawyers. There's millions of content creators in this world. Doesn't mean we don't still need content. There's millions of all types of skill sets in this world. That doesn't mean that you can't be a part of that skill set. What you do is you disconnect, connect with who you are, become more self-aware of your skill set and what you can bring to the table. And when you're ready to connect again, you're connecting with intent, you're connecting through your priorities, and you have a plan and you have a way you want to go about it. Because if you don't connect with a certain level of self-awareness, it can be easy to become distracted and fall into a trap of consuming and doing what you think other people approve of. The use of our devices, our cell phones, our computers, our laptops, whatever we use to be connected, they have a central purpose. And it's such a big commodity because they have and serve a great purpose. I don't think any one of us go a whole day without using our cell phones or our computers in a large capacity, right? Excuse me. So I don't think that we necessarily need to just remove these things, as they serve a great purpose. But in that balance of disconnecting and unplugging from everything else, you will realize what you're using that technology for and why it serves a purpose to you, and you will understand that rather than blindly using the technology or blindly using your phone or having just mindlessly going through your phone, going through social media without any objective or idea of what you want to be on there for. And you want to find that balance of education, entertainment, inspiration, opinions, news, whatever you're on it for. If you can find that balance of it and consume it for a period of time and being able to unplug, I think it could be extremely healthy. And we're moving into an age of AI and a lot of advanced technology, and the tech industry is just completely elevating very fast. But I think on the other side of that elevation and that development, there's going to be another side that we place as a huge emphasis, and that is being able to disconnect. There will be a huge market for connecting and digital and online services and online processes. And then there has to be an entire market for disconnecting, focused meditation, connecting with others organically, spending time in nature, exercising, health and wellness, and placing an emphasis on that. So we have to find that balance that works for us, because having too much of disconnection will leave you unconnected, or you won't be connected to your friends and your family, and you won't know what's going on in this day and age. But also having too much connection can cause you to be overwhelmed by what you're seeing and consuming. So there has to be a great balance, and I think that individually we have to find that balance within ourselves before we search for that balance in the world. So that's why I'm naming the series You versus You, because this is a battle between the person you are right now and the person you want to be, and a balance you need to find within yourself. No one is going to find that balance for you, although you can seek help, and I encourage you to seek help. I encourage you to ask for help and find resources and to use other people and outsource. The battle is still being fought within your mind and how well you were able to take care of yourself and find that balance that works for you. And when I say balance, it doesn't mean that everything has to be completely in moderation. It's great when it is, but some things you're so passionate about that you want to obsess over, you want to do all day, and that's okay. As long as it gives you healthy feedback and you can do it in a healthy manner, that's okay to be really into what you're into. But on the other side of that, there has to be an effort made to find that balance to where we can connect and disconnect and go back and forth and do it at a higher level. And that's the ultimate goal of what we're dealing with today. So that's all I want to speak about, being connected and how to disconnect so we can connect with ourselves. Thank you for tuning in to episode 25. I hope you got some value out of it. I hope I provided you with some perspective on this particular topic, because I wanted to speak about this for a while, so I'm glad I got the chance to share it. If you are looking for more of my work or what I do, you can check me out on joseduncanjr.com or check me out on all social media platforms. All you got to do is type in Jose Duncan in the search bar, and you usually will find me. I'm on all platforms, and the podcast is also available on all platforms. So thank you for your continued support. And if you're enjoying the podcast, please leave a review down below. It really helps me grow the podcast, and it really lets me know that you guys are appreciating what I am doing here. Until next time, thank you for tuning in to the Unnatural Born Leader podcast. And don't forget that positivity is contagious and attitude is everything. Talk to you guys next week.